Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to return to our webinar series here at the Canadian Olympic Committee. We are really pleased and proud to be joined today by Ben Hulse and Greg Durrell from Hulse & Durrell. They're going to talk to us a little bit today about building brand guidelines and how to really make that come to life as an everyday tool in your organization. Ben and Greg have an incredible background, not only in design and in brand, but in sport. With VANOC, they've really done incredible work with our colleagues at curling and swimming, and as you'll see today with Equine Canada, or Equestrian now, Canada. So we're really pleased to be joined by them today. My name is Dave Patterson. I will be acting as your MC for today. Just a couple of things before we jump into this incredible content as we use our GoToWebinar tool today. One, you can see us. We can't see you. Don't worry. Two, you are muted. You will not be able to speak as an audience member today, and that's to avoid having baristas and dogs in the background. But we do want to hear from you. So there is a question panel over on the right-hand side of your screen. If you go in there, type the question out, I will field that question for you, and I'll pass that on to Ben and Greg at the appropriate time. And we're always looking for feedback and questions from our group, so we really hope you jump in and ask those questions and let us know what you're thinking. The other thing is we are recording the webinar today, so this will be available in the next day or so in an archive version up on YouTube. So with that, with the housekeeping out of the way, and with my great thanks and gratitude to Ben and Greg, I'd like to turn it over to you to talk today about building brand guidelines. Ben, Greg?
Awesome. Thanks, David. All right, let's dive in. So, anything down on the top here?
No, I think that was a good intro.
Okay, so just to kind of give you an overview about what we're going to cover today. So we're going to start off with talking a little bit about why we feel that brand matters, especially in the context of NSOs. We're going to chat a little bit about what is a brand guidelines and why you might need a brand guidelines. And then most of today we're going to spend on, as Dave alluded to, chatting through a brand that's going to be launched next week for Equine Canada, now Equestrian Canada. So to kind of set up the conversation a little bit, sort of taking a step back, this is the way that we think about value for, especially in corporate partners, but as well a lot of stakeholders. And so obviously the athletes is your wheelhouse. We didn't put too many words around there. That's for you guys to fill in the blanks. But we'll spend most of the day talking about the bottom half and especially the right. So if we just look at the next thing after this, the athletes, the audience, the number of eyeballs, for example, they bring to corporate partners. So the events, competitions, your kind of web presence, this sort of what's your reach, and then we think about the other side that we have here, which is brand. So what you stand for and what you look like, and this is often kind of a dare I say undervalued or misconceived in the NSO world, we feel, and this is an area where we've really had an incredible opportunity to contribute to, and we've seen some really remarkable outcomes from. So under what you stand for and what you look like is this sort of strategy or your brand positioning, sort of internal culture, and how those come out through various aspects, themes, obviously aesthetic, logos, colors, typefaces, which we'll be talking about a little bit today. And then the last one to the bottom right here is consistency, and that's ultimately what brand guidelines help with, is it helps with consistency. So what is brand guidelines? So it shows who you are and what you look like. It introduces this kind of kit of parts, so like I was alluding to, these colors, the typography, the logos, as well as technical specifications guiding that. Presents a cohesive vision to stakeholders to activate on the brand, so that everyone, whether it's a contractor or a vendor or a staff member or a corporate partner, they're all pulling from the same DNA and using the same kind of user's manual, if you will. Guides a wide range of disciplines and applications, so everything from writers to designers to marketers and all these different kind of genre of disciplines, and of course all the different applications from print to web to field of play to everything you guys get involved with. And then it's often a key deliverable of the brand development process. And so this is arguably the most important part, and we'll kind of review these a bit later as well. But why might you need a brand guidelines? So from our experience over the last decade or so working in the sports arena, we've seen it be an essential tool to build a cohesive and valuable brand. Sort of as I was alluding to on the last slide, it helps to get everyone on the same page and to ultimately inspire and guide all stakeholders involved with the organization. Saves time and money, which we'll touch on a little bit as we go through here. So you're not reinventing the wheel every time you need to create a web banner or an invite to a gala dinner. You're not starting from zero. You have this scaffold and this blueprint in place that you can pull from every time you do these things. And of course, transfer of knowledge. When you get a new intern or a new staff member, there's this manual that kind of transfers that knowledge over time. So.
Equine Canada, I'll roll this section a little bit. So we started working with Equine Canada last fall. Was that when it kind of kicked off?
That's right, yeah, September.
September. So it's a funny story, but when they actually reached out to us, we weren't really sure who they were. Neither of us were really familiar with the term equine, and it took us having to use our dictionary to kind of figure that out, that it's a scientific word for horse. So that was really the first place we started, and when we kind of when we inherited this project, this was their current mark. So Equine Canada Hippique. So it didn't really have a really elegant name, especially when it translated into French. And from doing our research and understanding, the French word is actually not. It's more about horse racing rather than equestrian. So there were some really huge challenges there, and with one of the main goals being to try to connect with more Canadians and become relevant to more people, a very obvious and easy place for us to start was to propose a name change, which the organization was into. So the name change was the Equine or Equestrian Canada, Equest. When we looked at the overall kind of brand landscape, there was a really diverse and wide range of different logos. And what they had done up until now was every discipline that is under equine or was under equestrian now had their own logo. So it really diversified the brand and really diversified the team. So one of our goals was to try to create one mark that could represent all disciplines.
Yeah, and if you think about all the impressions that each one of these disciplines has, it's relatively small, but if you add them all together, that's where it becomes powerful. If people are seeing in the community the same mark, a consistent brand message that the community can rally behind, we've seen it become so powerful. And the landscape that we're looking at here is very, very common when we kind of take a look at what's happened over many decades, put it all on one page, and kind of really look at what the community is consuming. It's really hard. There's not much to grab onto, as you can see here on this slide.
Yeah. So one of the things that we found when we started kind of digging into the history and analyzing the organization a little bit more was that when the organization began in the 60s, the emblem that was used to represent the team was really quite beautiful, and conceptually it was really strong. Just the maple leaf with a horseshoe. And what's interesting about the horseshoe is that it speaks to the entire organization. No matter if you're vaulting or jumping or dressage, it's still relevant to each discipline. And there was this history already there of this emblem in use. I don't think they really nailed exactly the aesthetic look, because it was never really meant to be an emblem that kind of represented the organization and had to be used on National Horse Day, to the convention, to a team patch. But this was where we started the project. Anything to add?
No, and to just expand briefly, after discovering this in their DNA, it really became about trying to get the right technical and aesthetic kind of balance of this sort of beautiful geometry, but something that was still going to feel technically accurate as a horseshoe. And here's the solution.
Yeah, so here's where we arrived. So this is the emblem. So hopefully the colors coming okay on your guys' screen, but so it's a red maple leaf with a silver horseshoe. So the silver will be printed in like a metallic silver when it's in the physical space with a really classy navy blue background.
And one of the reasons that we chose navy, we'll get into it a little bit as we start to jump into brand guidelines next, but this is just to kind of give you context. One of the reasons we chose navy is because there was this history of the navy blazer in the Canadian team. Obviously there's a red blazer as well, but it's sort of ended up being this really kind of luxurious, prestigious complement to the silver and red.
So now we're going to kind of dive into the brand guidelines, and we'll kind of run you guys through some pages of that. So here's the cover. We've also done extensive amount of photo shoots for them as well. So this cover shot is of a young rider, Jaden. Was she 11?
12.
12. So we went out to this beautiful park and followed her around on her horse for an afternoon. I actually ended up getting a little sunburned, but that's another story. So let's dive in. Anything else you want to set up before we?
No, I think the other thing to set up maybe is that this document is not only a brand guidelines intended to guide the application of the Equestrian Canada brand, but it's also an example unto itself, meaning the aesthetic, the intention that you're seeing on this cover alone is a good example of an expression of itself. If you will. Yeah. It starts to get kind of deep, but the document itself is also an example of the guidelines. So.
Hi guys.
One other thing.
Yep. Hi guys. This is Dave. Before we appreciate the depth of this is the thing that it describes, and all of our minds are blown. So well done there. But on a more practical sense, before you jump into this, who is the intended audience for this document?
Absolutely. So really the intended audience is all of their partners, all of their stakeholders, internal and external. So really anyone that interfaces with the brand, whether it's a advertising company that's making an ad for an event, or it's an internal communication, someone writing a Facebook post. This guide should help guide all of them.
Mm-hmm. And as well, even kind of vendors and contractors. Yeah. If you're having the new paint put on the walls and you want to make sure you have the right color, or you're having a pin produced, this document can be useful for a wide range of anyone who is touching and activating on your brand. Yeah, would be a good way to sum it. Cool.
The last thing I'm going to just set up before we dive in is also the kind of setting up the goals of the aesthetic and the design as well. So as you know, kind of equestrian is kind of viewed as a luxurious sport, although not all the athletes come from wealth or from money, but really the intention of this document was really trying to imagine, Prada meets a really beautiful fashion magazine, like a Vogue or an Elle. So that was kind of really our inspiration behind the identity. If you think of like the sponsors in this world, it's like Hermes and Rolex and those sort of things. So try to speak to that language as well. Yeah, we don't need to. Table of contents. So again, here we're just kind of setting up a little bit of the story and showing some behind-the-scene moments of helmets on the wall, a historical photo, as well as like a young rider in the right corner.
So this gives you a sense of what the document contains, so information on the colors, emblem, typography, identity, publications, some kind of programs and competitions. So it's sort of the overall brand landscape for the organization. And so we'll start. I'll read the introduction to you. Hopefully, this gives you a sense of kind of a positioning statement for us. So sometimes we call them brand manifesto. These things kind of go under different names. But really, one of those key bullets for us was to guide and inspire the audience, and we hope that the document does that. And some of the ways we do that is through just the kind of the tone, the themes, the copy. So, introduction. Horses have transformed our lives since the dawn of civilization. They have sparked innovations, powered revolutions, and became our beautiful, beloved companions. They embody freedom, power, elegance, and agility. We have partnered in athletic competition since the ancient Olympic Games. Two equal athletes, horse and rider, unified in challenges of strength, rhythm, grace, and speed. Today we bring Canadian values to the equestrian tradition. We nurture our land and our animals. We are virtuous, proud, and grateful, and we celebrate the remarkable bond between humans and horses. From a quiet trail ride to the raw intensity of a fence jump, we represent passion and prestige in every aspect of the equestrian lifestyle. Take the lead, join the pursuit. So hopefully that gives you a sense of thematically what we're trying to do here is give a greater context to the sport, why it's unique, the elements of this amazing partnership between horse and rider, kind of expanding off that poetry, and in a really, we hope, meaningful and genuine way to make not only the people that are inside this community kind of more excited about the movement and the organization, but also people outside. So why is equestrian and why are horses interesting? To Greg and I, for example, because we're here in Vancouver downtown, and it's hard for us sometimes to kind of understand that connection. And so this introduction and the way that we tend to position brands is all about trying to figure out what's that magic that makes people passionate about this sport, in most cases for life. And it's a really fun discovery process for us, and that's what this introductory copy is trying to do. It's trying to kind of get some of that magic dust down there.
Yeah. So to just kind of go through, so we don't need to kind of go through every page, but we always love to, as much as possible, like interject athletes and athlete quotes in it as well. So this is Ian Miller. He holds the record for most Olympic appearances at 10. Rio is going to be his 11th. From that really inspired introduction copy to then explain a little bit about what the organization itself does, who they are, how large they are, how many affiliated organizations, those kind of details of really trying to help partners, stakeholders, outside people understand who Equestrian Canada is. One thing we really enjoy having that athlete perspective, but also like trying to highlight some of the things that make each sport really relevant and unique. So for this one, our sport is inclusive. Men and women of all ages compete against each other in all official equestrian competitions. So that's a really, for equestrian, like that's a really powerful statement, because they're one of the only, I mean, there are a lot of sports that have men and women compete against each other, but the age range, especially in this sport, is what really makes it unique.
Yeah, and you'll notice from a cadence perspective, we've got some pages that are really light, so you can really kind of just get a hit of some really kind of key value or property of the organization or of the sport, and then we have some stuff that's more dense. So that's just kind of something I'm noticing as we're going through here. So
and then we just hit a splash of color for the chapter covers. So number 2 is into the emblem and colors. So again, like trying to empower as many people internally and externally as possible, we thought it would just make sense to talk about the emblem inspiration here. So about how the horseshoe became this superstition back to the 10th century. The legends date back into the 1960s when the Canadian athletes begin to wear it on their uniforms. So if you're not familiar with this symbol or you're not familiar with equestrian, this kind of gives a little bit of background context about where the symbol came from.
On the right side, you can see the Navy blazer, where that Navy inspiration was from.
So then into showing the emblem itself, so just presenting it on a clean kind of landscape, as Ben was talking about, that kind of balance of high density and low density. Then into the color values as well, so just breaking down where the colors in the main identity.
So again, whether you're printing what's called process printing at you're printing in magazine style, which is kind of process, or you're doing RGB, which is more screen values, is sort of the core information for most applications that are here.
And then into the emblem versions, how it can be applied on different kind of backgrounds. And then into the typography. Was there anything else in that section?
Not really. I think it's just there. We have a page to kind of guide the core usage of the mark. I think something that Greg and I really, the way we approach guidelines is we really encourage what's possible rather than what's not possible. Yeah. So you'll notice, actually, if we skip back to this last page, instead of having a page filled with don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, we have a page filled with, when you're doing one color applications in grayscale, this is the mark you use. When you're doing full color, this is the preferred version, and this is the alternate version. This is the version for reverse. So, and then typically we'll just the don't do's, because there's about 1,000 don't do's around this, and so we'll typically just try to provide a positive example, and then just kind of mention in the small type, graphic effects such as gradients and drop shadows are never permitted, for example, in the left column. So that's the way we approach guidelines, because that's what we find as designers most empowering.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, focus on what you can do rather than what you can't do.
So typography is interesting. It's really the visual tone of voice for the organization, and it's something that we use extensively in this brand.
Yeah. So for this one, Giorgio Sans was the main headline typeface we chose for a bunch of different reasons. One, very aesthetic, like it has a very tall, elegant, high-fashion feel to it, but also the condensed nature of the typefaces really allows us to write equestrian without it taking up the full page. So
pretty big word.
It's a really economic typeface as well. And you'll see as we get into some of the applications like why it's kind of working well. So in addition to the primary typeface that would be used for headlines, we also looked at what the secondary or complementary typefaces are. So for here we have two different styles. There's Lion, which is a serif typeface, and there's serif and sans serif typefaces. Serif is the one that has the little nicks on the corners. So if you look at the A or the M at the end, you'll kind of see these kind of terminals that come out. And then sans serif, which means no serif, is the Swiss BP on the right. So it's a lot more, it's just a lot more geometric and simple of a typeface, and kind of pairing all three of these typefaces together can kind of produce some really beautiful combinations.
We're in design school now. So, and as well, what you can see is maybe a little bit heady, but basically there's these three typefaces that are actually used on this page.
Yep.
So the word typography at the top was the Giorgio, so that's the primary typeface for headlines and sort of display. And then as you can see, the body copy is this kind of more, is the Lion, which is this kind of more readable, more practical body copy, just to kind of give you a sense that we're actually using this already through this document.
And then you can see the Swiss BP in, if you look under Lion Display Light, where it says body copy, that's the Swiss BP. So it's a really kind of minor, subtle detail of when that sans serif typography comes in, but design is all about the details, and for us that does go a long way.
Hey guys, I have a question for you if you don't mind. And it's coming up here, and you see it on the previous page, this one and the next one. You've allowed for a couple of exceptions, and then in a couple of cases you also said this should never happen. Since never is a long time, what do you suggest an organization, if they're undertaking this, how do they go about deciding ahead of time when can we make an exception? And I know for you, for a designer who lives and breathes this, I'm sure the answer is never, under no circumstances.
No, I wouldn't say that at all. Like, I think that's the thing about these documents. Like, they really need to be a living, breathing thing. Like, you can't. It's really. I mean, I think you can create the foundation now, but a foundation of a building. But you can always renovate the suites, right? I think that's what this should kind of be. And there's so many different factors of applications, and there may be new partners or new merchandise lines or things that kind of come up. I think for us, the biggest thing is to stay away from any stylistic kind of trends or effects that you can say being add to the core identity. The core mark and that should stay the same, but in terms of slight tweaks to colors or typefaces, I think there's some flexibility.
There's just simply special cases, and so one thing we're careful with these documents, we don't try to account for 100% of applications. We try to account for maybe the 80 to 90% of instances, because otherwise your document's gonna kind of have lots of silly stuff in it that's sort of, you might do once every year or two. So it's really about what we hope is a concise document that captures the majority of needs. And for sure, there's always going to be, in fact, there's already some exceptions to some of these rules where you have extreme proportions, for example, like fence fabric, or even smaller stuff that can kind of require a little tweak to some element. But the ideal scenario is, you can hear we're downtown Vancouver.
Yeah.
The ideal scenario, we're far away from the stables, would be that you have the brand guidelines, and then you have a trusted partner that you can work with through those exceptions and through those applications that require a different kind of thinking. That's typically the best case that we've found is when we've been pinged on really kind of extreme cases.
Yeah.
Or how to extend this into a dimensional space for awards or podiums,
yeah,
or things like this, which we actually worked with Swimming Canada recently on a podium. Turned out really cool. So,
yeah. Does that answer your question, Dave?
It sure does. Thank you very much.
Awesome. No problem. So keep rolling through. So chapter number 4, main identity. So what we've done to kind of set it up, like we set up the typefaces, we set up the emblem, we set up the colors, and now we're going to start showing like how it all kind of comes together in this section. So here is now the emblem with the typography. So again, you can see how equestrian just proportionally fits really nice with this typeface in relation to the emblem. Logo and clear space. So here's the kind of construction behind the emblem as well that sometimes is empowering for people to kind of see. So the emblem basically takes up it's like a 2 to 3 ratio. So the emblem is 2 kind of line heights, while the typography is 3 lines. We also kind of created this special case initials emblem as well. We did a merchandise program for EC, and so this was just something that felt a little bit more fashion and that could be embroidered on a sweater, as you'll kind of see later. And then into the photography and writing.
Yeah, so bang on here. So yeah, as alluded to earlier on, the writing is really important to your brand. Apart from the visual tone of voice, the actual tone of voice, and the themes, and how you're kind of capturing people's imaginations and sort of attracting the outliers who otherwise may not be interested in the sport. And this photography has the same power. If you kind of create a signal, if you will, that people are interested in, that's got beautiful photography, it's remarkable in this new digital social world we find ourselves in, the power of that. So the next few pages are intended to be sort of a creative brief for photographers, if you will. And so speaking of different disciplines, one I didn't mention, I don't think, was photography and videography. So just to set this up, yeah, we kind of have a few different kind of properties that we speak to here. So one's angles and sort of the intention behind mixing angles, so the medium, close, and sort of really kind of capturing some of those details, as you can see on the boot on the top right. Sort of, so it's not just all about the horse and the rider together, or just about the horse, or just about the rider. It's about some of these kind of details and minutiae that make this sport really compelling.
Lighting is another one. So trying to find that really dramatic, beautiful, natural lighting, whether it's early in the morning or late in the evening. It's just something, as Ben alluded to, this is really a brief for the photographers. So to just keep a couple things in mind like this. And third is the subject matter as well. So for us, I think the pictures that really resonate with people and really capture people's attentions, obviously the stuff on the field of play and it's great, and those are often really the hero shots of a lot of these types of projects. But there is also something beautiful of the moments behind the moments, of that recreational trail ride, of a close-up of a horse, of a trainer working behind the scenes with a horse or athletes. Those are photos that I think people really resonate with.
And then writing, just it's as part of the sort of the specifications for this. We have a bit of copy on the sort of the intention behind the copy, the tone of the copy, as well as the terminology. So there's in every sport there is some sort of we find there's kind of specific things where you maybe you don't include apostrophe here or you do in this thing or whatever. So the terminology is kind of a little bit of a catch-all for the staff to maintain a consistent language.
And also for like events too is another big one too, like making sure you have the correct event names and everything like that as well. So we won't read this page for you. That'd be pretty dry. Publications. So this was kind of a unique one that we've done for these guys that we haven't done for anyone else that we've worked with so far. So Equestrian Canada does a lot of publications. They produce a magazine. They pretty extensively work on a pretty elaborate annual report, which you'll kind of see later. So with all this, with this rebrand, it was like, how do we kind of create these templates that will save them time and money in the future when they have to kind of produce these publications?
Yeah, this was really the base level. So
yeah.
You know, for a freelance designer or an in-house designer who we're sort of passing the reins over, unintended. This is sort of a very kind of a very basic way to think about how to lay out a page and how to set up a page.
Yeah. So when they take the lead, unintended again. Oh man, it's getting too much. Too far. So here's like maybe this looks extremely dry, but behind any great publication design, magazine, anything, there's always a grid, always the structured grid that you align the photos and text and everything to that will allow it to feel like a cohesive document as you're kind of flipping through. So when we flip to the next page, you'll kind of see now how we begin to kind of fill these elements. So where the headlines go, where the body text goes, and then when I flip to the next page, here it is now with that content. So there's a lot of variety in these kind of pages that are just on this page alone, yet they still share that same structure.
Yeah, and this is actually the first time you're starting to see a few things come together. So we see the typography, the color, the photography, and this grid. So now we can start to get a sense of these elements coming together.
Yeah. Excellent. Programs and competitions. Okay, so
yeah, I mean this it was pretty remarkable how you know, all the different things that the organization gets involved with. Is, as many of you know, it's every time we work with an NSO, it's always like, wow, these guys do so much. And to account for this wide range of programs, everything from, as you guys are well aware of, from kind of grassroots stuff, National Horse Day and kids programs, all the way up to sort of this intermediate level academy, which we'll see on the next few pages, to capture all the stuff and to have that retain a really consistent and elegant look. We went through a whole gamut of different solutions, and the most powerful one, which is not rare, is often the most simple one. And so to kind of have it work really well in English and French and bilingual, we put together this kind of lockup system, this program lockup system.
Yeah, and you can kind of see the structure behind this system is a little different than the master emblem, which was a 2:3 emblem to text ratio. This is now like a 1:1. So from these templates of how the English works, English, French, and French, here's then into the color variations of how they can be applied. And you know, as we kind of mentioned earlier, there could be some flex as these things move forward in the future, depending on how they're applied, on what materials. But this is the starting point where we'd like to begin and recommend for them to begin.
Hey guys, I have a question from a non-designer.
Yeah.
Please.
What do you mean by lockup?
Great question.
Yeah.
So that's just referring to the fact that there's an emblem and there's text.
Yeah.
And they're together. And so what we're seeing on this page is it's just a term of reference that is used to describe what's happening. So for example, the Academy is now a logo, and we sort of have termed it as a program lockup. So how do you consistently attach with the...
Yeah, like how do you lock up text with the emblem in a kind of consistent way? I think it's kind of a term that it's really a little bit more related to locking up two emblems side by side, which we'll get into in a little bit, but...
Yeah, and sorry, and then just the other thing to build on that, actually, because I think another really important point, and one of the reasons why we kind of went with the language program lockup rather than program logo is because I think that sometimes it's dangerous when you call everything a logo, because the intention is, for example, on a website, you're going to have the equestrian logo at the top corner or top middle or whatever. It's going to be top left corner actually, but and then once you kind of have a page content, for example, for Academy or for Horse Day or for Horseplay or for any of the programs, you don't necessarily want the same logo repeating on the scaffold of a web page, for example.
Yeah.
So we kind of created this system that is to be used in certain applications. It's not and it's not meant to kind of be required every time like a logo would be. So whenever something appears, yeah, you put the logo next to it. It's not really the intention here. The intention here is for when there's Horse Day poster or a booklet for the Academy, that's when these lockups are used in those kind of standalone applications.
Yeah.
So that's getting a little bit heady, but it's actually really, really important because so many organizations that we get involved with, it's always there's a different logo for every event, gala, discipline, and you just end up with logo soup everywhere. And so that's part of the intention here with languaging it this way and with designing it this way. Cool.
Yeah. Just a couple of, there's a lockup right there on the far right, the horsepower. So you can see the Equestrian Canada logo with the COT emblem. And then, yeah, so here's one variation of the emblem as well. So for the Owners Club, so this is, a kind of prestigious club of everyone that owns the horses. So this was, a subtle adjustment that we made on the master mark of, instead of it being silver, why not for this specific application we go to a gold. So it just kind of made sense and kind of flexes with the brand guidelines, but we never want to see that emblem in blue or pink or green or something like that.
Not for a while. Anyway.
Not for a while.
All right.
And then quickly through a couple other examples, so annual convention and awards gala. So again, just creating like a really easy system that they can just kind of use year over year. Up until now, they had created a new emblem every year. So as you can see in the annual convention, we took that kind of ECCE kind of fashion initial symbol and just substituted in with the dates, and then the text follows very similarly as the kind of structure that we'd set up earlier. And then into competitions as well. So this wasn't really part of the scope to really drill into these competitions and solve all these challenges, but I think what is really powerful about this system is how well it translates into event competitions, into programs, into AGMs. It's really flexible enough to account for a lot of different scenarios.
And it might feel a little dry right now, but that's actually really, really good because it feels remarkably consistent, a little dry, and then once you kind of pair this with photography and all the other things that happen around a brand, which is just typically chaos, these marks and this blueprint, this scaffold is really going to hold remarkably well.
And to your earlier point, like it continues to build brand recognition and impressions, which is the most important thing, I think, through all these touch points.
So we should go pretty fast through this. I think we're
patches
running a little long.
Yeah. So just how do you contain the emblem in case you got to put it on a pin or an athlete's sleeve?
Yeah, and then some patches for different programs. So young riders, junior riders.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's all good. Not too much more to add here, but this is sort of it was kind of important for Equestrian Canada because they have these different programs that the athletes require the patches on the uniform. So that's what these solve.
And then into partners. So one page here. So this is that partner lockup that we're talking about. So here's a kind of template of how a partner can lock up with the EC emblem. Obviously, this has to flex a bit. Like if Coca-Cola all of a sudden comes on, they're not going to fit within the square. So you'd have to kind of go a little bit more horizontal. If McDonald's came on, then it's probably not that they would, but that would balance a lot better in there.
Never know. And the text on the left kind of speaks to some intention as well of it speaks to some of that gray area. So the partner logo should be scaled to ensure the visual balance is equal to the Equestrian Canada emblem.
Cool. And the back cover.
Back cover. This was shot about 2 weeks ago, roughly.
Yeah.
Roughly in Langley, BC, and what a shot, hey?
Yeah.
We're pretty happy with this one.
So a couple final quick slides that we should.
We got some applications. So we're going to share kind of 5 quick slides of applications to show. So those are the brand guidelines, and then what does that ultimately guide, and hopefully something that looks like this. So here's the annual report. So you can see it's very, very connected to the aesthetic and the intention of the first page of the brand guidelines as well. Kind of a
table of contents. Or no, this is the core values. Yeah.
And then this is a really fun page. So this is showing the sport license holders by province, and again, this is like a completely different. There's nothing like this in the brand guidelines, shall we say? But it's pulling the visual DNA, the typography, the colors, the intention, the grid. It's very, very structured. It feels clean, but it feels kind of hopefully high end. So we're pretty happy with that.
We also created a merchandise line that's something else Ben and I have been involved in recently. We're working on a whole bunch of merchandise for Swimming Canada. So we created a couple pieces for equestrian as well. So the flocked equestrian across the chest with that kind of special case initial emblem.
And this merchandise, the sweater was milled, cut, sewn, printed, and designed in Canada by us.
And you can see we also made custom neck labels for them as well, which is a nice detail. Into some hats here as well.
So there's kind of this special case red edition made for Rio.
Into a classic t-shirt. So here you can begin to see a little bit of that metallic print picking up in the silver components of the emblem with custom hang tags and neck labels as well. And business cards. Here as well.
These are not yet printed. We didn't. This is the mock-up.
This is the mock-up.
We're faking it here.
Okay, so key takeaways.
Key takeaways. You guys have heard this once already, but these are definitely worth looping back. So key takeaways is the brand guidelines are essential tool to build a cohesive and valuable brand. So kind of how do you keep it consistent? You keep it consistent with a manual that's going to inspire and guide all stakeholders. Save time and money, like we implied, with the use of, you got a new brochure to do for this event. What are you going to do? You're going to go to the brand guidelines, and with any luck, that's going to you can pull from that and be able to do that, and it's going to transfer knowledge over time. So
that's it.
That's it. Any questions? If we have time.
Yeah, we have time, and for those of you who in the audience, please don't hesitate to pass on some questions. I do have a couple to get you started. Julie Stevens from Brock University has one about pairing up French and English in a lockup when there's a lot of text, when it's annual convention and awards, or more than just a couple words.
Yeah, so that's definitely a huge challenge, and we've taken a couple different approaches. What we did for equestrian, do you have it available?
But the report?
Yeah, so what we did with the report, for example, it's actually in that bin over there. So what we did for the report was that one side is in English, and then when you flip it over, you can open it the other way, and it's in French. So there's a couple different approaches. What we did at Van Ock quite often was try to, so here's the example. So here's the English cover, although my screen looks backwards, so if you open it up, it's in English. And then same cover on the back, but this one is in French. And then you can kind of open it this way, and it's all the French content. So there's a couple different ways to kind of do that. We addressed it a little differently in the curling and swimming guidelines. That there's some case studies on our website if you check that out.
Yeah. So honestly, the other thing I would add is that sometimes there's different approaches that can be taken. So one option is that if you have to have a bilingual application and the name's very long, you can do the best you can to find typography, a type arrangement, and the right typeface that's going to give the best of the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
So the other approach that you can take is, can anything be communicated without words? So can you use photography or can you use iconography to communicate, let's just say, for sports basketball or whatever, and instead of, maybe that's not a good example, it's basketball, that's fine, but let's say it's swimming. So Swimming Canada, for example, the emblem is bilingual without words, because it communicates Canada and swimming through the iconography. There's other instances where we've been able to reduce words, like I said, through photography. So there's a few approaches that you can take. Sometimes it's just that, or renaming an event. We've renamed events
or an organization. I mean, when we started with Curling Canada, they were the Canadian Curling Association, the Curling, the Canadian, whatever it was. But see, I can't remember. It was impossible. It was impossible to remember.
Well, it was 6 words.
It was 6 words, and we reduced it to 2. Curling Canada that works English and French.
So yeah, there's a lot of different techniques, and everyone's unique.
Yeah.
So that brings us to another question. It's really clear that you guys have a, let's call it a bias or a preference to consolidate, simplify. So the question is around the way that in your work with Equestrian Canada that you consolidated the look, and that there were many, many different kinds of looks, and you consolidated down into one. I think for a lot of people in NSF, politically that can be very difficult because some people really like having their own place. And then practically, in some cases, the disciplines really are pretty different. So is there a time where you'd recommend not taking that approach, maybe speaking generically? And also, why do you have that approach to, when in doubt, simplify?
Like this one? Yeah. So I would put the when in doubt, simplify aside for now, but let's start with the real tangible one, David, which I think is a really great point, and I think that it's very relevant to equestrian as well, because those disciplines, whether you from outside or inside you view them as the same or different, they view themselves as very different. So I think that the power with this process, we've seen the power on the other side, the return on investment, in terms of unifying behind a single identity, intention, theme, community. We've seen the power because, as we were saying, if we pull up the slide, can you still see our screen, David?
Yes, we can.
Go back. I'm just going to go back to the beginning here and just review this slide right here. So if we look at this slide and you think about all those brand impressions that each of these disciplines or each of these events or newsletters or things get, they're all very small, but they add up to a reasonable amount. So the reason why this is an important part of the story is because it's communicating this to the entire organization, to the entire community, that together, if we unite, we're going to have so much more power, we're going to have so much more influence and opportunity. Because as well, when you think about a corporate partner who's interested to get involved in this example, equestrian, if a major airline or a major bank wants to get involved and they want to lock up with a logo and show their pride that they're involved, like, how do they really do that here? They can't do it because it's so diverse, and the brand is not. It also, none of these brands, if I may be so bold, would complement a major airline or a major bank as well. So in terms of the opportunity, that it's these qualities that need to be communicated to the organization and to these different disciplines and different stakeholders, so you understand the vision for what's possible. And it's not about a color or a logo or a shape or whatever. It's about a strategic vision to help to take an organization to the next level.
And to answer the second part of the question of our tendency to kind of simplify, it's because of the complex world that these NSO brands have to live in. You have to be extremely complex. If they're elaborate, if they're high detailed, I mean, these things have to exist on everything from a small pin to large in the ice to on a plane, on a train, on a embroidered on a uniform. When these identity systems are like overly complex, it kind of loses a lot of sophistication, and I think it really makes them unmemorable. Like that is what we're seeing here. Like it's the horseshoe, it's the leaf. It communicates everything quickly and fast, and is memorable. And when you think of the strongest brands in the world, from Apple to Nike to Starbucks now, who has gone a non-verbal emblem, that's what really resonates, I think, with audiences.
Okay, thank you. And then I have a completely the opposite question, also from the audience. Was there concern about going with 3 typefaces rather than 1, and that might create some confusion on a day-to-day basis in terms of enacting that?
No, there really wasn't, because it was very clearly laid out when to use each typeface. So the Giorgio Sands that you see here on this page, again, another great example of the annual report 2015. That's used only for titles. And then the Lyon, which is the body copy, is used exclusively for body copy. And then that third sans serif is just in very, very small places, which in this instance is in April 2016, which is very small at the very bottom of that white container. So they also have, the Equestrian Canada also has a designer in-house. So we've been working a lot with him to kind of get him up to speed and collaborate on this stuff. But we do try to simplify this as much as possible. So even when it goes to their Microsoft Word templates, the typeface just switches to Times, just so it's simple and everyone has it and it's really easy to kind of use. Anything else to add?
Yeah, not really. I think, typically we'll have two typefaces. For this one, 3 really was just right for the project.
Yeah.
Okay. On the really practical side, have you done this with any organizations? I've seen it done elsewhere and was curious about sort of on the brand guidelines, like a quick reference guide that someone might just laminate, put on the wall in their office just as a reminder.
Sorry, what's the question?
Have you used a quick reference guide? So just sort of a one-pager version that people can have at their desk.
We have not. We have not yet. It's an interesting idea. When we were working for the Vancouver 2010 games, we had some similar-ish stuff that was maybe not a brand guidelines on one page, but the answer is no. It's an interesting idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. With that, we're just coming up on 3 o'clock here, and we've promised the group an hour of their time, and I would like to first of all say thank you to Ben and Greg for great content, great insights into not only into this process more generally, but also to what Equestrian has done, as well as I'd like to pass on a public thank you to Equestrian for sharing their very early launch products around their new brand, and I think we're all very excited to see that as that sort of really comes to life sort of over the course of the summer. So with that, again, Ben, Greg, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. For the rest of the audience, our next 2 webinars in the series are Monday, June the 6th. We'll be joined by Dr. Norm O'Reilly from Ohio University to talk about sponsorship valuation. And then on June 13th, we'll be joined by Denny Young from Denny Young & Associates to talk about a philanthropy toolkit that we've developed with him for use in the NSF community. So with that, again, my name is Dave Patterson, and it's really been a pleasure to have you today. Ben, Greg, thank you very much, and thanks to everyone for joining us. We're looking forward to having you again another time soon. Thanks, everybody, and have a great afternoon.